Welcome, fellow horror hounds, and welcome to the latest episode of Talk and Stalk, your unholy home for horror. I'm your host, as always, Barry, and I have a very special guest with me today, fellow friend and fan of the particular show that we're going to be talking about today, Tom.
Hi, guys. Hope you're all well.
Glad to have you here, man. Now, I know you're a big fan of this show as well, and I'm sure people would actually wish they got £1 or $1 every time I mention this show. I have implored countless people to watch this show because I think this is a fantastic series that really doesn't garner enough attention. I don't think this show gets the recognition that it deserves. I mean, it certainly does have a fan base, certainly, and it's received a lot of critical acclaim in the 6 years that it's been running. But again, I still don't think that enough people really know about this show. And that, of course, is Inside Number 9. Now, Tom, what was your introduction to this show? Did you actually watch this show from the start, season 1?
Well, funny enough, my auntie's from down south and she came down and this was just last year. So when season 5 started, she turned around and said, "Have you ever watched Inside Number 9? And I instantly know that Reece Shearsmith and Steve Pemberton are behind this show. And I'm a huge League of Gentlemen and Psychoville fan.
Yeah, same here.
I was like, "Oh, is that Reece Shearsmith?" And then she was like, "Yeah," and I'm like, "Yeah, let's watch it." So it was the episode, The Referee's a Wanker with David Morrissey.
First episode, season 5.
Yeah, and it was so hilarious, and I absolutely loved it. And then they were all on Netflix, so I watched them all on Netflix, and I absolutely loved it. I think this is probably Stephen Reese's most creative work out of League of Gentlemen and out of Psychoville. Like, don't get me wrong, I'll always pick the League of Gentlemen, but this is just it needs more credit than it already gets.
So you were quite late to the party then. I mean, I'm like you. I'm a big fan of the League of Gentlemen. You know, I've loved Shearsmith and Pemberton since their League of Gentlemen days. I really liked Psychoville. And, the inception for this show really came from an episode of Psychoville. There was actually one episode in which was entirely set in their flat, Maureen and David. And that in itself was actually a homage to 1948's Rope, the Hitchcock movie. And that's where they actually decided, you know what, maybe we could make a show around this, set in one room, one location, whatever. And that's where the whole inception, the whole idea for Inside Number 9 came from. And I agree. Obviously, they were performers of League of Gentlemen. They were two of the 4 writers, obviously Mark Gatiss and Jeremy Dyson as well.
Yeah.
So as soon as this show was announced, I'm a huge Shearsmith and Pemberton fan. B, anthologies. I absolutely love them.
Can't go wrong with a bit of anthology.
The Twilight Zone, Alfred Hitchcock Presents, Tales of the Unexpected, The Outer Limits, Tales from the Dark, the list goes on, Tales from the Crypt. And so as soon as it was announced they're doing an anthology, I'm thinking, yes, I'm certainly on board for this. And what we got is a show. The only thing that connects the stories, because obviously it's an anthology, each is a standalone half-an-hour story, different characters, different location, very different tonal shifts as well. Some episodes are a lot more comedic. Some episodes have a much darker edge to them. And that's what I love about this show. You never know what you're in store for with each episode of Inside Number 9. Just when you think you know what direction the plot's going in, they throw a curveball. And some episodes even have a twist upon a twist. We're going to do this, aren't we? Spoiler free. We're going to try our best.
Yeah, but I'm going to give you all a heads up. It's been out 7 years.
Yeah, which is a lot easier said than...
excuse. No, I'm joking.
It's a lot easier said than done. Because being an anthology, though, twists are part and parcel of anthologies. Everyone that goes into an anthology, they should know that there's probably going to be a twist. There's a very good chance there's going to be a twist. Now... So we're going to try and talk about these episodes, the first 6 episodes of season 1. I'm just going to get right off the bat and say, what a first season. A fantastic first season to this show.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Well, there's one episode that we will talk about that is actually in my top 5 episodes of the show, full stop. There is one episode.
I think that episode.
Yeah, and just quickly getting back to what you said, Netflix. They're not actually on Netflix anymore, but for anyone that has a BBC iPlayer, BBC, they're all on, all 6 series. It's just finished its 6th season, and a 7th season has already been officially commissioned, and it actually goes into production later this year. So yeah, and hopefully, fingers crossed. I know their plan is to get to 9 seasons. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we get 2 more seasons. But okay, so the first episode we're going to talk about here is sardines. Now, I don't know about you. I think this is a great episode. I actually think this is a kind of pretty much a perfect start to this show.
Yeah, definitely. I agree, because it sort of has a simple aspect behind it, like, whereas minor spoiler alert, it's just, it was meant to be an ordinary episode of hide and seek, and then it ends up turning into like a game of sardines when everyone were just getting into the wardrobe.
Yeah. Well, I didn't even know what sardines was prior to this. I looked it up. Sardines is a party game that I believe is played among the privileged. It's usually, to play a game of sardines, you need a large house, a large accommodation, because it's basically, unlike hide and seek, it's one person hides, all of the other people have to look, and every time they find that person, they have to hide with them.
Yeah.
And so this episode is set at Rebecca's engagement party. She's looking around. It starts off, obviously, she's looking around, and basically the majority of the episode, pretty much the whole episode, is in a wardrobe.
Yeah, majority of it is in a wardrobe.
And you think to yourself, on paper, how's this going to work? It works. It works perfectly, because you get all of these characters cramming into this wardrobe, and there's all of these little subplots going on. There's some great comedy in there, but there's definitely something noticeable, isn't there? There's something dark underlying, bringing just underneath the surface in this episode.
You're trying to like think what's going on, like what's it actually building up to. And again, there was some comedy elements that were really going into it, like the grandma's comment about the dress stitched me up about it.
Oh yeah.
And the chemistry work between Shearsmith and Pemberton,
who actually play a couple. Shearsmith and Pemberton are a gay couple in this episode, and it's brilliant. And yes, Catherine Parkinson, most famous for the IT Crowd, is actually her engagement party. This, I believe, has the biggest cast of any Inside Number 9 episode. When I say cast, now there is an episode in season 2 that also has a lot of people, but as in characters who have speaking roles, I believe there's 12 characters in this episode.
Yeah.
It starts off with essentially 2, and then it just, character after character, they're all piling into this wardrobe. And we hear about a character called Stinky John.
Oh, yes.
A guy who stopped washing one day, he stinks. We hear about a boring guy who's actually the first person in the wardrobe. Ian, what this episode has, it has some awkward silences between Jessica and Ian. Then, of course, as the characters come in, and there's all these little, you realise there's something going on here. There's something, but it really, to me, and we're not going to talk about what, this has probably one of the most unexpected twists.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. And also as well, what I noticed in the wardrobe scenes, when Stinky John goes in, you can sort of feel the atmosphere of like everyone just getting so uncomfortable with the smell and what's going on around them. Yeah. But as well, there is that dark atmosphere what was building. And then who knows, without any spoilers.
And it all makes sense. If you watch it a second time, it all adds up. It all makes sense, but it's very subtle. You're not by any means bashed across the head with what's going on. There's kind of a love triangle, kind of a little subplot, thing going on here as well. Just this disparate set of characters. I like the guy that goes in there and he starts making out with his wife.
Yeah.
Geronimo! They're trying to get out of the party game and all that, and we really, because I don't want to talk about it too in depth in case people are listening, they haven't seen this, but this has a big twist. This does have a big twist that I certainly did not see coming, and having watched it a second time, I'll admit there was a lot of little things I didn't notice.
Yeah, because I started to, sorry for interrupting. I started to notice them a little bit as well, like the second time I watched it, because I remember the first time I watched it, I was like, holy shit. And then the second time I watched it, I was like, okay, now I see how it's all fitted in.
Yeah. There's some comedy that definitely works. Definitely, particularly like the character of Ian, the boring one with the glasses. There's these kind of awkward silences when it's just him and Jessica in there. And yeah, great sense of claustrophobia.
Yeah.
It's as the episode goes on, it just becomes more and more claustrophobic.
I think that's what leads it to build up. Like the claustrophobia leads it to build up to something more sinister and disturbing. And also to top up on side stories, and I think with Pemberton's character, I'm not sure if he's actually opened up to his parents, because every time like Reese goes, "Oh, he's my parent," he goes, "No, he's my flatmate." So
yeah. Well,
so that.
There's so many things I'd like to say. There's so many little lines that, yeah, when you watch it a second time, you look at the episode in a different light.
Yeah.
Because let's just say that there's boiling beneath the surface, there is a very dark theme going on here.
Yeah,
it's not outwardly obvious. So I think Sardines is a great episode. It's actually my third favorite episode of the series, of season 1.
I don't know where I'd rank it into like my favorite season of the series, but I did like these ratings when I was rewatching them, and I rated it a 7 out of 10 because as good as it were, I didn't think it was the best out of season 1. So it would probably go pretty low on my list compared to other episodes we're going to talk about.
I mean, I just like right from the start of it, it's kind of like she's walking around looking, she smells the soap, she looks under the bed, and she opens a closet and the guy's in there.
Yeah.
It's like when you first watch that, it's like, what is this? What the hell is going on?
But it is definitely a good start to what they were leading up to, like with this series, like the anthology, how dark it were going to get, how comedic it were going to get.
To have that many characters in one single kind of location, for what I understand with the shoot and that, it was quite challenging. They actually used 2 wardrobes.
Really?
It's kind of a fake one and a real one, and it was it's but hard to notice which is which. Yeah, it was incredibly well done.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. That's Sardines, very good episode. Now, we're on to number 2 now, which is the best episode of season 1, in my opinion, and does actually make my top 5. It might actually be my second favorite episode, full stop, of the show, and that is A Quiet Night In.
Yeah, this episode is absolutely phenomenal. The way this was written and the way this was done, like, unbelievable.
Yeah.
How people like Pemberton and Shea Smith have pulled it off, I don't know.
Yeah, this episode is basically silent. I can't really go into it, but there are basically no words spoken from start to finish. And the whole episode, it's just incredibly well done. Just 2 episodes into the show, and already Shea Smith and Pemberton were being very experimental.
Yeah,
this was a very bold move to do an episode like this, and we don't see stuff like this anymore. This kind of harked back to the days of silent cinema, silent comedy. Laurel and Hardy, Buster Keaton.
Yeah, but I think with the whole silent aspect now, I think that's being brought back now with A Quiet Place. But I feel like this obviously did it way before then. But as well, the side stories as well to it. So it's right. Minor spoiler. I won't tell you all about it. It starts off with a robbery that's taking place, but in silence. Then there's another side story to it, which then turns into another side story. So you've got 3 different plot lines in one there.
Yeah, there are a couple of bungling burglars trying to steal a painting, and it's nothing's going according to plan. It's one thing after another. Shea Smith and Pemberton are brilliant. Again, they're the two burglars in this. We actually get Dennis Lawson. I don't know if you know, but the guy in the house was Wedge Antilles from Star Wars.
Really?
Yeah.
And every day.
Una Chaplin, the wife, is actually a descendant of Charlie Chaplin.
Good, yeah.
One of the kings of silent comedy. Now, apparently, that was a coincidence. I thought they'd purposely cast her to, because obviously she's a descendant of Charlie Chaplin. Apparently, it was just a happy coincidence.
Well, it's worked well for them.
But again, this episode, as you say, just so incredibly well crafted. It's just so many There's so many great gags in this, and it's all done silently. That's the thing. And what they've done, there's a great level of constraint, because how they've done it is they're two burglars. They're trying to be as quiet as possible. They're a married couple who aren't talking to each other. They're clearly going through problems, so they're not speaking. And without going into spoilers, there's something introduced later on in the episode that also doesn't bring any words into it. I can't say what. But you mentioned...
it shocks you.
Yeah. But there's twists and turns. Again, it wouldn't be inside number 9 if there wasn't twists and turns. I think you'd agree here, even with the days of League of Gentlemen, even though it wasn't an anthology, that show had twists.
Yeah, it did. Like, it had so many twists in there.
Yeah.
And again, with this episode, I think the comedy works so well with it. Like, there were some scenes that were absolutely hilarious.
Yeah, there's a certain scene obviously involving a dog.
Yeah.
There's a scene that I actually love as well. Just a little moment where the homeowner's gone to the toilet and they're like, how long is he going to be in there for? Has he gone for a poo or has he gone for a wee? And they're doing it in silently. And I think, what is it like? He says, like, how long does it take you? And he's like, 10.
Yeah, he's and then like he's messaging him for duck say. Duck.
Yeah, have you got your phone on silent? And he keeps texting him. It's so incredibly well put together. A bit with the peppers instead of the cucumbers.
Yeah.
Just nothing's going right for these two guys trying to steal this painting. It's absolute genius. It really is genius.
It's hands down probably one of their best, if not their best episode throughout the entire series.
There is one episode that I do put above it, but that'll have to wait for another season because it's not in season 1. But yeah, this episode is just it's just hilarious. It's just you don't see things like that anymore. You just don't see stuff like that, not in a comedy show. And even though it's funny, it still manages to have them unexpected twists. Especially love the ending. And I can't hear Nilsson's, what is it, Nilsson's Without You?
Yeah.
Sorry.
I always associated that song with Peep Show, and now since Inside Number 9, I always associate it with Inside Number 9.
Yeah. I think that these guys, Shearsmith and Pemberton, proved just early on in this show that they're trying to do something different. They like to push themselves. They like to really
definitely.
Yeah, this is by no means generic or anything like that. A Quiet Night In, best episode of season 1, in my opinion.
Yeah, I have to agree.
Yeah.
But either that or there is another episode that we're actually going to talk about, which I'd put as my favourite.
Okay. What, from season 1?
Yeah, from season 1.
Okay, interesting. Okay. So, yeah, we're going to get on to the 3rd episode now. Now, this is an episode that has a darker edge to it, certainly. As always, there is comedy in there. There's bits that certainly make me laugh. This one's called Tom and Jerry. Now, this is one that, from what I understand, was actually wrote many, many years ago by them two while they were unemployed on the dole. They wrote it as a 2-hour play. Many changes were made to fit, the show, but the general idea was the same. Now, this episode has Reece Shearsmith as a school teacher, an aspiring writer who encounters a tramp, a homeless person, who very much becomes injected into his life. Now, again, we can't really go into spoilers here. What's your kind of overall thoughts on this episode?
This episode, honestly, it's personally my favorite from series 1. So the way it starts, like him and his girlfriend are like just suspecting this homeless man, and she's like saying, "Oh, there's a tramp outside," and he's like, "You can't say that." Like, so they're getting into the thing, and then I think he dropped her off at the train station, and then just minor spoilers, and then he gets this sort of call saying, "Oh, you've dropped your wallet," and basically it was Mig, the homeless guy, like handing him his wallet back. But also as well with this sort of like episode, it goes into stuff like manipulation a little bit, and it can also go into how people take advantage very easily of your kindness.
Yeah, I think it kind of goes into like the downward spiral as well of somebody becoming. We can't really go into it, but yeah, it becomes quite apparent quite quickly that this homeless guy that he basically takes in, starts living with him, and he starts to almost take over his life.
Yeah,
there's kind of a paradigm shift between the two. Tom himself starts to become more decrepit, disheveled, and again, we can't go into it, but what a twist.
that twist is incredible. Like, I certainly never expected that.
This episode kind of leads you down a false path. You think you kind of know what direction it's going in, and then Shearsmith and Pemberton, as I said before, they can throw a curveball. I love this episode. This is my second favourite of season 1.
Yeah, this is probably my number 1 for season 1, definitely.
Just that sight of Mig, Steve Pemberton as Mig, with the when he offers that, he takes his shoes off, and he's like, "No,
he's just like, no, keep them on. You're all right. Don't worry."
He's sitting there on the sofa. He's like, "Oh, best to just contain it."
Yeah, but then as well, like it's like there was one scene in it that sort of like threw me off a little bit. So do you remember? Again, minor spoilers. Someone was going visiting Tom, Shearsmith's character, and they say, "Who's Meg?" And he was like, "Oh, Meg's just my friend." And he's like, "Oh, there's no one here." And then they turn around and Meg's actually sat on the couch. So again, that throws you off really well.
It does, yeah. We can't really go into that, but yeah, they certainly lead you to believe certainly something about the story. They lead you to believe, and I'll be honest, I thought I'd got it sussed. But again, there's a very kind of dark edge to this. There's a very dark edge to this story. And you really do start, even though he's not a particularly likable character to begin with, the fact that he hates the tramp, but he almost becomes sympathetic near the end. I kind of feel for Reese's character in this.
Yeah.
Because of what, we can't really go into it.
Yeah,
but when you get the full picture, because Gemma Atherton plays Jerry, his girlfriend. Yeah. And his name's escaping me. It's the guy from Game of Thrones.
Oh,
I can't think of his name. But he plays the guy that checks up on him.
The name's gone out of me.
Yeah,
I knew the name for a minute.
In the first episode, Sardines, we get a huge cast in that, don't we? I didn't mention we get Tim Key, we get Timothy West, like I said, Catherine Parkinson. But yeah, with Tom and Jerry. It's a very dark edge kind of storyline, but it still manages to be comedic when it needs to be. There's comedy in there, but I think this has one of the best endings of any season 1 episode.
Yeah, I've got to agree on that, because it's something you don't expect.
No,
but you think, as you said, you think it's one thing, and then curveball straight away, and you just think, oh shit, I didn't expect that.
So basically that's the idea of the episode. Tom's a guy who seems to have this hatred for tramps and whatever, and he meets a tramp, and then we won't go into it, he takes a shine to the tramp, and the tramp is essentially Mig, that's basically starts to live with him and take over his life in a way. Great episode. If I was rating and stuff, Quiet Night In would be a 9. This would probably be an 8 for me.
Quiet Night In, I rated a 9, and I also rated Tom and Jerry a 9. So they're both like on par, but I would probably pick Tom and Jerry for the twists.
Yeah, it is a great episode. Very well written. Yeah. Now, episode 4, we're going to come to what is probably the weakest episode of the season. But that's taking nothing away from it. I think that's just a testament to how good the previous episodes were. This episode, I'll admit, it's my least favourite of the series, but I have come to appreciate it a lot more with repeated viewings. And that is Last Gasp.
Yeah, I agree with you. It is definitely one of the weak ones of the series, but again, it's written so well. And again, it's got so much like subtopics to it. Like how far people would go to like sell a certain thing, like especially with someone who's passed away, like scalpers and all that, and then it can dive into a little bit of manipulation again without going too much into detail, like what Steve Hampton says to his daughter, like this is your ticket to Disney World.
Yeah. What we get is a suburban house, a seemingly normal family in this, don't we? Singer's invited over for their daughter who's, you know, in ill health, and he's gone there and he blows up a balloon for her and he ends up dying whilst blowing up the balloon. And what this episode really does is explore human greed and celebrity culture, if you will. So it's quite, you know, underneath this facade of a suburban family, there's quite a dark undercurrent to it, because when he dies, basically we go, I don't think this is a spoiler, it becomes apparent very early on. The balloon becomes the focus of the episode, is that, hang on, they've got a dying man's breath in this balloon.
Yeah, and then they were looking up all prices, like something like Justin Bieber's fringe and Michael Jackson's glove, like what they're going with. But again, the daughter gets attached to the balloon, so she doesn't want to let it go.
Yeah,
like everyone's trying to get it off her, like the mum and dad. Is it Tasman Glenn
from Friday Night Dinner. What do you call it? Friday Night Dinner.
Yeah, Friday Night Dinner.
Yeah.
Funny enough, the daughter in this is called Tasman as well, so that's like a coincidence.
Yeah.
And you've got the security guard who was I can't even think of the singer's name now.
Frank Parsons, I believe it is.
Yeah.
Or something like that. Something Parsons. Yeah.
Yeah.
This episode's very comedic, isn't it? This episode does have a lot of comedy. It does work. As I said, I don't think, even when Inside Number 9 isn't at its very best, it's still good. It's still a really good show. And I love the commentary that this episode makes, actually. It just shows you the depths that a seemingly normal family will go to for money. And there is a moment in this episode, again, it's spoiler-free, there is a moment in this episode where it does start to turn darker.
Yeah, I know which part you're getting at.
Yeah.
And then, again, that shows how far people will go for greed.
Yeah.
And that sort of shows the outlook of people. But again, with what the security guard says, like, it shows, like, what celebrities can be like some of them, like, because he didn't want to do it, didn't he? No.
Yeah. So yeah, what we get, because basically it's more like the mother's more interested in having the singer around, not the daughter. She's essentially kind of doing it for herself. She's a big fan of the singer. The little girl has no kind of say in the matter whatsoever.
So it's sort of taking advantage of that as well, isn't it? Which I've noticed.
There's a moment I love, actually. I mean, all of these episodes, we could turn this into a 15-hour podcast. I'm just going to say that every episode has so many moments that I love. You know, there's so many moments that do genuinely make me laugh out loud. And I thought Tamsin Greig was great in this, as we come to see how incredibly selfish this woman is.
Yeah.
And she's completely against type, because I've never seen Tamsin Greig in this kind of role before, where she's typically a more likable kind of character.
Yeah, because like when you look at her as Jackie in Friday Night Dinner, like everyone just loves her and that. But in this, it shows her dark side. But this also shows how fantastic she is as an actress. Like,
oh yeah, I think the casting for all of these episodes is great. I think they definitely chose the right people for everything.
They've never chose a bad actor.
Or 100% agreed. Now, interestingly as well, this episode and one other episode of the series is notable. This was the first episode where Shearsmith and Pemberton didn't star together.
Yeah. Yeah,
what they tried to do, well, from what I know, is apparently they decided that, you know what, I'll star in one, you'll star in the other. And then they realised that people actually wanted them together, because they do gel and bounce off each other so well.
Because I don't know if you'll agree with me, like, in this episode when I was watching it, I was like, what is Reese going to come into it, like, with this manager?
When I first watched it, yeah.
Like, I thought, Reese is going to come into it, and then when he weren't in it, I was like, why is he not in it? Like,
and also the last episode of season 1, which we will get to very shortly, Obviously, that starred Steve Pemberton's in this one. I love the moment where he threatens to pop the balloon.
Yeah.
There's a lot of profanity, there's a lot of swearing on it, and he's just like, and they're all vying for this balloon, and they're sitting around. I mean, they're talking about a dead man here. You know, they're talking about like, we've got to split it 4 ways or 3 ways, sorry. And he's like, why is it 3 ways? I've got a wife and a kid. Let's split it 5 ways. And you forget that they're talking about a man that's just died here.
Yeah. So it's also disrespectful to him as well, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because like, again, like I've noticed with when I've like seen you might have noticed as well when celebrities have recently passed away, like people like sell on stuff what they get.
Oh, it's crazy. Yeah, and this episode explores that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it shows the dark truth of that.
Yeah. They mention Scarlett Johansson, her was it a used tissue or something went for like however many thousand.
Yeah.
Now I think what probably maybe disappointed some people, because to me about Inside Number 9, it's all about the journey. A great twist is great, you know, a good twist and whatever, but it is about that half-an-hour journey. Now, I think for some people, this didn't have like the big twist that some people had expected.
Yeah.
This doesn't have the big, you know, gut punch twist ending or anything like that, but it's still very kind of, it's very, what's the word I'm looking for? Very poignant.
Yeah.
The ending and that as well. So, I think Last Gasp, good episode. My least favourite of the 6, taking nothing away from it.
I probably agree with you on that. Definitely one of my least favourites, because it just didn't, it had comedic elements, but again, it was still a good story, but it just didn't jump out to me like other episodes have done.
Yeah. At the end of the day, it must be really hard. It must be really difficult to write these scripts, you know, half an hour, and to throw twists that people ain't going to see coming.
Like, I give Reese and Steve so much credit for what they're doing, and especially like 6 series now of coming up with different stories for each episode. Like, it's incredible how many stories they've actually come up with. Like, I never expect that from them.
No, I'll be honest, right? I mean, I actually thought, I didn't know if this show was going to carry on. I didn't know if this show was going to go much longer than even 1 season. I'll be honest. Fortunately, you know, 2nd season was greenlit and that, and I think the BBC were very confident, because as soon as season 5 aired, they commissioned season 6 and 7 straight away.
Yeah, so they sort of had hope for the series, which is good. Yeah. And I don't think there's been one, like, you'll agree with me, there's been 1 or 2 episodes that weren't great but could have been better, but they still had this sort of aspect to it. But then there's been other episodes where you think, that's phenomenal. Like, how the hell have they
I don't think there's ever been a bad episode. Hand on heart, if I honestly thought, I'm not like some people think I'm a Shearsmith Pemberton fanboy and stuff. I love their stuff, but if I honestly thought they'd done something really bad, I'd say to it. But even when, like I say, even when the show's not at its best, it's still good, and it's still better than a lot of other shows out there.
Yeah, I think the only time I've been disappointed with an episode, like, but again, I've spoke to you about this as well. I need to rewatch this, was probably the last episode of season 6. Like,
okay,
because again, I remember actually saying this one was a bit thingy. It didn't sort of feel the same. But again, if I rewatch it, I'm like, knowing me, I'll rewatch it. I'll be, oh yeah, it was fantastic.
It was an episode, not to go into it, it did make a lot of social commentary. It made a lot of commentary about the age that we're in now.
Yeah.
Especially in Britain. So we'll get on to the next episode now. Okay, so we're on to episode 5 now, The Understudy. This is where Reece Shearsmith and Steve Pemberton obviously took on Shakespeare. I actually think this is a really good episode, and I think it's one that doesn't really get talked about that much, in all honesty. I just want to say that I think Pemberton, both of these guys are brilliant. I think Pemberton especially is just brilliant in this one, as Tony, as a stage performer.
Yeah.
He's really unlikable, boisterous and that, but you end up feeling a little sorry for him later on and whatever. But I don't know about you. I'm not clued up on Shakespeare. I'm really not. I don't know much about Shakespeare, but from what I understand, this episode very much mirrors Macbeth. to a degree.
Yeah.
And
I think you can see that with some of the stuff, like, as you're looking into it, like, it is definitely Shakespeare. And again, little minor spoiler, another thing I do really like about this episode is it's in acts. So, like, the play, like, it's in acts.
Yeah, it's structured in 5 acts as plays are, yeah.
And also, it can show you, like, the dark subject of alcoholics, because Tony, is it Tony? Steve Hampton's Steve Hampton's
Tony,
character.
yeah.
Like, he used to be an alcoholic, didn't he? And then he was something like, was it 3 years or 3 months sober?
Yeah.
And then I won't go into the other side of it. It shows how that can sort of change.
Yeah. Well, I think with this one as well, I just love the setting. I love it's at a West End theatre. It's the what is it? The dressing room. The dressing room in the West End. And from what I understand, this script took the longest to write, actually, because they were actually very torn between were they going to be professionals or was it going to be a touring theatre troupe, and they weren't quite sure what to do, but they finally settled on West End theatre. And I love the setting because we don't see the inside of the play happening, but we hear it. We get to hear it. I love that, the fact that Pemberton's character, Tony, hates the guy that's on stage.
Yeah, is it Martin Clune who's on stage? Doc Martin?
No, he was a guy that got a role in Doc Martin.
Oh.
Yeah, and his walk on, he hates it. And again, this episode, there is a dark edge to it, certainly. I find this episode very funny, though. I think her name's Julia Stevenson. I think Julia Davidson, sorry. I think she's great as the dressing girl.
Yeah. Yeah, her role into it's incredible. Like, and again, some very unexpected, like, in this episode, which I really like. And also, like, again, sort of minor spoilers, but not spoilers. There's like flash scenes in it.
Yes, like it kind of delves into horror territory almost. There are some moments that, again, I'm not well versed in Macbeth. I'm sure people that are into Macbeth. Now, the thing is, this is the important thing, though. Even if you're not into Shakespeare, doesn't matter. It's just a good episode. I don't think you really have to be well versed in Shakespeare to appreciate the episode. It does actually have, again, they kind of lead you along this false path to believe something, and again, it has kind of an unexpected ending. I found to be quite unexpected.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, definitely unexpected. Again, with the shot that came at the end, I was like,
yeah. Again, just amazing. And this gets back to every episode we've talked about, how transformative these two guys are. How they can go, like Pemberton can go from being so sympathetic and likable in one episode to villainous in another and creep. I mean, look at him as Pauline in League of Gentlemen, or look at him as her lip, the German teacher.
Yeah.
Who just, creepy and...
Yeah, like, her lip's definitely creepy. And then Pauline's just like an absolute, like, she's just an absolute mean bitch.
Yeah, and that's Pemberton. You have to remind yourself, that's Pemberton. These guys are very talented writers and performers. They just bring so much to each role, and they truly immerse themselves in the characters they play. So yeah, with this episode, as I said, I just love the setting for it. Again, I think there's some great comedic moments. There's stuff I won't repeat because people haven't watched it. I don't want to ruin the jokes and stuff. There's some lines that Pemberton's character especially comes out with.
Yeah, there is.
How a certain person got a role in the theatre cracks me up.
But also as well, with the, like, stage boss, is it? Like, again, like, it shows, like, how much no one likes her and that, and then all of a sudden...
It's as I say, I mean, you know, Pemberton and Shearsmith clearly have like an astute knowledge in the stuff that they do. I know they're huge horror fans and generally pop culture in general. And to get a kind of a Shakespearean episode. Now, usually the word Shakespeare kind of, like, you know, veers me away. I'm not really into Shakespeare. But this episode is just so well written.
Yeah, like,
it's just so well written.
As I said, I agree with you. I'm not a fan of Shakespeare. Last time I read some Shakespeare was when I was back in school, but no, this like probably put justice to it. It did so well, and again, one of their most creatives they've done.
This is my fourth favorite. Just to let you know, this is actually my fourth favorite of the season.
Well, I'd probably put this second for me.
Second, interesting. Awesome.
Yeah. No, actually, I tell a lie. Quiet one and A Quiet Night In would be second. This would probably be third. It's high up.
Yeah. And yeah, as I say, it's it kind of like it throws you. Because obviously, Reece Shearsmith has a girlfriend in this, and she desperately wants him to get this role. He's an understudy. He's the understudy. And Steve Pemberton's character is the main man. He's the
and the girlfriend's like pushing Reece, like she's like saying, "Look, that is your chance. Go for it. Just do it." And it shows as well how one small chance can take you so far.
Yeah. And it certainly, you know, it makes commentary, it makes statements about power, which, again, I believe Macbeth is really about, you know, power. And it's a really good episode. It's just one that doesn't seem to get, when I see these polls online and stuff, it doesn't really get talked about a huge amount, the understudy. Yeah. But good episode. Now, the final episode is where they veer into all-out horror territory. Shearsmith and Pemberton are huge horror fans, and they certainly let it be known in this episode. And this one's called The Harrowing. And this episode is basically an ode to old school Gothic horror, notably the old Hammer movies of the 50s and 60s. This episode is a lot darker in tone. There's still comedic moments. There's still bits to laugh at here and there. But it's a much darker episode. What's your thoughts on this one?
Again, I really like this episode, and like again with the whole Gothic aspect, it was incredible. And then like you could feel Summit was wary, like you could feel the intention building and building and building, and then as soon as it led onto it, you just think, holy shit. But again, I agree with you, it pays to like old homage horror films, like, and that's what I liked about this, because again, there's a lot of recent films now that don't do that. Like, they don't dive into like the old school stuff.
Yeah, I think this one definitely shows, you know, the love for horror. Now, interestingly, this is the one that stars Shearsmith and not Pemberton. And I love Shearsmith where he says like, "Oh, I'm not a vampire." She looks at him kind of shocked. He's like, "I'm not a vampire. I play guitar. I'm not a vampire." You know, with this episode, by the way, the house that they used, which was perfect. You know, perfect setting, perfect sense of atmosphere to this episode, is the same place they used for Seance Time and Riddle with the Sphinx.
Bloody hell, I didn't know that.
I did not know that until yesterday. It's a place they visited 3 times, 3 episodes. I don't know if I'm missing any, but they love it for that whole kind of like Gothic atmosphere it has. Yeah, this episode kind of follows the tropes of the whole kind of babysitter, alone at the house. Obviously, classic urban legend that dates back to the 50s, I believe, 40s or 50s. This episode, again, I don't know what we can talk about and what we can't talk about here.
I do think a little bit of it does get foreshadows, like especially with, I know it's minor, like spoilers, the paintings, like you can sort of see what this is building up to.
Yeah, okay. Well, let's just say that it's horror. It delves right into horror, and it's something to do hellish. It's something to do with the world of hell. That's all we'll say. This episode has a very bleak, if you will, ending. Not a twist as such.
Yeah,
But again, even when they don't do major twists, this is what I like about these guys. Even when they don't do major twists, there's still little twists peppered throughout. All I'm going to say to you now is the bell.
Yeah, I agree with you on the bell.
Just a little twist, just little things here and there. That the episode doesn't have to end with a big twist. There's because there's an episode in a later season that we'll obviously get onto at a later date that has no big twist ending. And I mean that in a way was the twist. It was kind of like you're expecting something big to happen, and it doesn't.
Then
happen.
It would just that.
What's that?
And again, then it would just that. But again, I think it dives into the whole like same horror tropes, like you know not to go in there, but then they end up going in, and then they suffer the consequence of what happens.
Yeah, I think they prove that Shear Smith and Pemberton can make you laugh, but they can also creep you out when need be.
Definitely.
Now, I've seen a lot of horror films, so I'm not, I'm pretty much kind of immune to horror. But I will admit that seeing the final, the final scene sequence, shall we say, is probably going to be deemed to be quite scary.
It was very, but also, right, this is going to make you laugh now. The ending, I won't mention who. Don't you think they looked a bit like Dr. Satan from House of Thousand Corpses?
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah, just because, like, when I saw a certain thing, I'm like, is that Dr. Satan?
Yeah. The prosthetics, the makeup effects are very good.
Yeah, it is. It was fantastic.
Very good. There's some good jokes, involving, like, there's a cat, there's a chair. Yeah, it is called a chairlift, isn't it? I think.
Yeah.
A chairlift.
Also, as well, it sort of like goes back to like when there was like the haunted houses and stuff, like TV shows and stuff. So like the Addams Family and the Monsters. Well, there is a
Monsters reference in there.
Yeah, there is a Monsters reference, and it sort of has that element to it.
Yeah, it's it certainly. I mean, even the poster, because they released for each upcoming episode, they actually released a poster to promote that episode. And for this one, they actually used kind of an old school Amicus horror font and imagery. So they actually made it look like an old 50s, 60s horror movie poster. That's what they were going for with this episode. And that's what I love about the show, is that 1 minute you got something that's comedic, a little light-hearted, and then you get something like that.
Yeah, so, and it definitely shows their creative sides to it.
It keeps you on your toes. It certainly keeps you on your toes. You never quite know what to expect. And I think, to be honest, because I don't think this is really a spoiler as such, every season now, well, almost every season has had one horror episode. It's become quite synonymous for Inside Number 9 to have one horror episode per season. Definitely. This was a good start to them. It's really good. As I say, it's not one of the funniest. It's not one that has like big twists and turns as such, like some of the earlier episodes.
Yeah.
But it's a great half an hour horror.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one.
So where would you rank this? Where would this be in your 6?
Well, I rank this at about 7 or 8. Did I mention like my rankings for like the understudy in that?
The understudy was number 2, wasn't it, for you?
Oh right, it was like number 3. I did say 2 at first, and then like I was like, oh no, it's 3.
Okay.
Understudy I rated about an 8. This one I'd give about, again, a 7 or 8, because it, as well, there not really being a huge amount of twists, there was still that creepiness they still gave. And again, I don't find a lot of horror movies do that now to this day.
There's a joke, broadband. I mean, one of the jokes, broadband. Yeah. We had someone, he offered us broadbands. Oh, yes, I had to close the door. The man was certified.
Add brilliant jokes into that and then still be creative.
Yeah. So I'll give my rankings in order. Number 6 is Last Gasp. Number 5 is The Harrowing. Number 4 is The Understudy. Number 3 is Sardines. Number 2 is Tom and Jerry. And number 1 is Quiet Night In.
Right, and this is my list. So my bottom is, I'd probably say mine is Last Gasp as well. I'll agree. My fifth one, I'd probably say Sardines for me. Because again, I felt like they could have done a bit more than what they already did. Like, don't get me wrong, they did brilliantly, but I felt like they could have done a bit more. Number 4, I'd give The Harrowing. Number 3, I would give The Understudy, because again, that episode was just mind-blowing. Yeah. Number 2, I'd give A Quiet Night In, because again, it was probably their most creative. But again, and 1 Tom and Jerry for that twist.
Okay. Not too dissimilar. I think the only thing we differ on is really Sardines.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's quite a similar ranking.
Yeah.
I really do like Sardines. Now I know my mum's a big fan of Inside Number 9. She's not a big fan of Sardines and that. I love the whole kind of like concept of it. I think for Sardines, having all of these different characters in one single location. The introduction, the characters of Reese and Steve as the couple, and Stinky John, having all of these, and then what's her name? Rachel. I love the fact that Rebecca and Rachel keep
they get confused with each other.
Plays a part in the story, in fact.
Yeah, and then that asks you so many questions. No, I think with Sardines, I think I expected a little bit more than I bargained for, but this is the only thing I say. It is their first episode, so that's why it's not the bottom of my list.
Yeah.
So, but
I think they pulled it. I think they pulled it off like really well. I mean, the thing is, another thing that I like, with the ditzy character Rachel.
Yeah.
When she goes into the room, bearing in mind she's looking for someone, and she opens up the suitcase.
Yeah.
What?
Like you just think like,
yeah. But the twists, to me, it probably has. Hang on. It's up there with Tom and Jerry as the best twist, final twist.
Oh, that's interesting.
Almost. I don't know. It's close.
I don't think that beats the Tom and Jerry. I think the Tom and Jerry twist was just probably one of the biggest curveballs there is, because
it's something without going into it. The
ending, you feel like it seems complete, and then they'll throw that curveball at you, and you think, bloody hell, how have they got away with that?
Yeah. So I think overall, Sardines, a really good episode. Quiet Night In is just absolute genius to come up with that whole idea and to pull it off and execute it perfectly. Tom and Jerry, great episode. Last Gasp, the weakest of the bunch, but still good. What was the Understudy? Really good episode. And I think the Harrowing is again just an ode to old school horror that really works well.
That was a nice homage to horror fans, though, the Harrowing, and that's what I sort of liked about it. It was sort of a good homage to it.
Yeah, and there is an episode in season 3. We will get there. Obviously, I'm assuming you want to come on board for season 2.
Hell yeah!
Because season 2, I'll say this now: season 2, all 3, to me, arguably the best seasons.
Yeah, I see
overall.
I see where you're coming from there, because there is some absolute gems in there.
And I'll say this now: season 2 has what, in my opinion, is the best episode of Inside Number 9. I think it's going to be cliched. Anyone that's an Inside Number 9 fan will know what episode I'm referring to. I just think it's absolute brilliant for what they were able to achieve within half an hour. And you watch it again for a second time, and just it fits so perfectly.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's I think that's it, man. We've covered all 6 episodes.
That's it. Thanks for having me on. And again, to anyone who doesn't know, this is my very first podcast interview.
Yeah, I think you did really well, man.
Thank you very much. I hope everyone else enjoys
we'll definitely
it
get you back on board for season 2. So if you haven't noticed, people, I am a bit of a fan of Inside Number 9, and I urge you to watch it. For anyone that's a fan of A, anthologies, or B, just shows that are comedic. If you like comedy, if you like British comedy, there's a lot of great humour in these shows. And that's the thing about these guys, isn't it? They're able to, it's amazing how they do it. They're able to, because it's classed as a comedy show. They've won, I think, 1 or 2 BAFTAs now, but that's not giving it enough justice.
No, it doesn't give it enough justice, like the darker side of it. Because I feel like out of all the work they've done, this is hands down the darkest.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the thing is, this show, not to go into spoilers, this show delves into some really dark territory over the course of the 6 seasons.
Yeah,
there are some dark themes, but even with them dark themes, they still are able to inject humour.
Yeah.
And to do that is not easy, to balance that out. Humour with horror, with, one episode's more comedic, another episode's a lot more kind of Hitchcockian or dark. It's very hard to do. So but my all-time favorite anthology, for anyone that hasn't listened to any of my podcasts, shame on you for one, is The Twilight Zone. That is my all-time favorite anthology series. Ahead of its time.
My favorite anthology is not a TV series; it's actually a movie, and you're very familiar with this.
Creepshow.
Yeah, hell yeah. Like a lot of people may not be familiar with Creepshow, which was an anthology horror movie directed by George A. Romero and written by Stephen King.
Yeah, released in 1982. And for anyone that's listening to this, I'd hope they're a horror fan. And if they haven't at least heard of Creepshow, then I don't know what to say.
We're disappointed.
Go away, go away.
But again, it's got such fantastic like actors in it. Like you've got Tom Atkins in there, you've got Adrian Barbeau, you've got Hal Holbrook, who unfortunately recently
I just appreciate anything that can surprise me, because audiences are so savvy nowadays. It's very, very hard to trick an audience now.
Yeah.
Because we've seen so many things. We've got so many shows. We've got Twilight Zone. We've got Alfred Hitchcock. We've got Tales from the Crypt. We're used to twists. So to be able to pull something off now that people don't see coming, that's hard. That is a tough thing to do.
Yeah, it's very hard. Like, and again, it's probably the same with the horror franchise. Like, it's very hard for some films because, again, a lot of stuff's already been done.
Yeah, agreed. So inside number 9, with season 7 won't be till next year. Production goes in later this year, but yeah, I recommend it to anyone BBC iPlayer. I'm not sure for the people in the US. It is available in the US, but I can't actually remember as to what streaming service it's on. But it is in the US. This is an all British show as well, I believe. I'm struggling to think of any actor in the show that isn't British. Every actor that I can think of off the top of my head is actually British.
Yeah, I can't think of a non-British.
Oh no, there's one. I think there's an Australian girl. I'm assuming she's really Australian.
Yeah, in understudy in it, because I'm sure her in the understudy. I'm sure she's Australian. Do you know who was the manager?
Oh no, she's not Australian. She's British.
Is she?
Yeah.
From like when I've seen her in like No Fielding and like IT Crowd, I thought she was Australian.
No, the character I'm thinking of, the woman, I'm certain she's British, unless she's putting on the accent, in which case she does a good job. Was a woman from season 2, La Cochillette. The Train.
I think so.
But yeah, that's it for today. Thanks a lot to everyone that listened, and cheers, Tom, for being here.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
And we'll be back again soon to haunt you and torment you, and we will be covering season 2. Which what do you reckon, Tom? Do you reckon next week, or is that too premature?
Next week I could probably do.
Okay,
so if not, I will let you know. But so far, again, if it's Thursday, definitely.
Okay, so hopefully next week, season 2. Keep you posted. Thanks a lot, everyone, and we'll be back again soon to haunt you and torment you. Take care.
See you soon, guys.